Ferrari at Breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Right, let's come to our conversation concerning what appears to be the pressure now on the London Mayor, a soaring teenage murder rate in London. Aja is in Walthamstow. I hope I've said that correctly. Good morning.
Hiya, how are you?
Well, I'm all right. I'm rather concerned about this. What do you say to these figures? They're horrific.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the figures are horrific. I think I'm quite interested in the fact that you talked about kind of stop and search and the role of the police. I do agree that obviously the police have to do their job, but I think what the last person you were speaking to was trying to say is that that job has to be nuanced and they do need support from other agencies. So when we talk about the role of poverty, for example, it's important to factor into that if a child lives at home and their parent or their single mum is struggling to afford rent and some older person on his estate comes up to him and says, you can make £500 a day if you take this package for me, that, stop and search isn't going to prevent him from saying yes to that. Right. And I think that's the level of nuance that we need to have in the conversation and recognise that there are probably a number of agencies that need to be engaged in working with the police so that we're not just looking at stop and search to be the magic pill that's going to solve this.
And how are those conversations to take place?
So I used to work with the London Authority thing, and they would have regular meetings where they would bring together social services, the police, the local community, so youth workers, key figures in the community, the local churches, mosques, and so on and so forth. And they tried to have kind of like a multi-agency approach where they would talk about specific boroughs, what they were seeing, intelligence that they had. They would share that with the police. The police would then operate in different ways. So whether they would use stop and search, community intervention, and that kind of collaboration was really effective.
Professionally conducted, do you support stop and search, Aja?
I don't support it the
Aja,
way
why do you sigh? Why do you sigh?
Because I think it's such a crude tool.
And do you know what's also a crude tool? A zombie knife that one kid sticks in another kid's stomach. I call that a crude tool.
I 100% agree.
Well, if we could get our hands on one knife. Come on, Aja.
But hold on, Nick. Let's talk. It's not just.
Well, briefly,
let's search 100 men. Let's search 100 boys, and we get one knife.
Fantastic.
What you have to realise is that for the 99 boys,
don't care. I've probably saved a life.
But
and by the way, every stop is professionally conducted, is courteously conducted, is done in a manner, is filmed. I'm not.
But we know that's not what's happening.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. I don't think we know that, and that's why Cressida Dick is so keen. No, that's why so keen to have the camera, the body-worn cameras for her officers.
But we do know that's not what happens. I'm married to a black man. He's been searched so many times. I think probably in the last 5 times he's been searched, he had one police officer that treated him like a human being. My husband works in a school. There's the chances of him ever carrying a knife or ever matching the demographic that they need to be looking at is slim.
I've always said
I don't have an issue with stop and search. I just think it could be done far better than it's currently being done.
Okay. Aja, thank you, and best wishes to your husband and to your family. Thank you. And I've always stressed professionally or courteously done. Aja, thank you. Jacob in Nottingham, looking at the situation down here in London. Your reaction, Jacob. Good morning.
Good morning. First-time caller. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Thank you for ringing. So how long have you been listening?
To the show or this programme?
To the show.
To the show, about 6 months.
Brilliant to have you on. What were you listening to 6 months and a day ago?
Well, I have a funny... I go from, like, Radio 1 Extra to...
Now, that is a change in pace. How are we going to solve... What are we going to... Do we look to the courts here? Do we look to more police? What's the answer, would you say, Jacob?
I would say that knife crime and violence in general are the symptoms rather than the causes.
Okay.
And so if you look at school exclusions, if you look at the breakdown of the family...
Good point.
If you look at what causes young people to feel like they belong in a gang and feel like it's okay to be violent towards other people...
Right.
I would say it's because they don't have a sense of belonging in any positive pro-social environment.
How is that to be manufactured or created or delivered then?
Well, I think one of your earlier calls, you were talking to people about, past generations.
Yes.
And the difference between, the different generations. Well, my argument would be that in past generations, there was a greater sense of community.
True.
And that's the ingredient that's missing.
I think this is really good. Lastly, I've got to go because I've got a government minister holding, but I think you're onto such an interesting point. Jacob, why? Why has that sense of community gone, lastly?
I think it goes back to that other caller's point again, is the breakdown of funding in communities, the higher. I don't want to blame single mothers because they're doing an absolutely amazing job, but I would blame absent fathers.
Breakdown was what's called the family unit. Jacob, I'm so glad you found this radio station from One Extra, goodness me. Be sure to ring me again. Have yourself a good weekend. Thank you. Now, this is one grim headline, of course, in one of the newspapers. There's another grim headline that I brought you when we reviewed the newspapers in the first hour. Ministers admit shame over rape conviction rates and pledge reform. Let's put that now to Crime and Policing Minister and Conservative MP Kit Malthouse, who joins me now. OK, what's the reform that's on the way, Minister? Good morning.
Morning, Nick. Well, first of all, you're right. We are very shamed and regretful about the decline in rape convictions over the last few years since 2016, and we're determined to do something about it. Over the last 2 years, we've been reviewing end-to-end rape from report right through to court to tease out the reasons why. And the plan today that we've launched, although the work started earlier, obviously, is designed to rectify that and get us back to 2016 as a kind of base camp target from which we can then build. And we're going to be doing a variety of things because this is a complicated problem and the solution will necessarily be complicated. But the key things for me are, first of all, recognizing the impact of the mobile phone on rape investigations. As you will know, the smartphone has had profound implications for the investigation of crime across the board. There isn't a murder in this country that now isn't solved without mobile phone data of some kind. And in these most intimate of crimes, the impact on the victim in particular of intrusion into the mobile phone, the use of mobile phone data is critical. Making that minimal, making it as easy and quick as possible, supporting the victim through the whole process is a key plank of the plan. And then secondly, on the other side, working with the police and the CPS for a new model of rape investigation. First of all, where they work much more closely together right from the start. But secondly, shifting the balance of investigation away from investigating the victim and her circumstances, largely her, sometimes him, circumstances, more towards investigating the perpetrator or alleged perpetrator. Now, these, as you will know, Nick, are very difficult crimes to investigate. The vast majority of rapes happen between people who know each other, and that makes it very difficult. But making sure we understand the circumstances, behaviour, background of the alleged perpetrator is critical to us getting more cases into court.
Minister, I think your point about complexity is very well made, and it's a highly charged atmosphere that's these allegations. But I think what would concern many of my listeners or trouble them would be that the report also says that there's not been enough clear and prompt engagement from first report to trial. Minister, if we don't have a system that looks after this poor woman, or as you rightly say, in some instances, man, if we have, what on earth has failed there that we're not putting our arms around these souls?
Yeah, no, you're right. And we know that the victim journey, if you like, is a very traumatic and one that requires courage and patience and persistence. And it shouldn't have to be quite so burdensome. One of the things we do know is that we get a much better outcome when people are supported by what they call it independent sexual violence advisor. So we're putting more money into recruiting another 700 of them, a 40% uplift to make sure.
What do they actually do, Kit? What is the role of that person?
So their role is effectively to be a shoulder, an advocate, a support, an advisor to the victim as they go through the process to help them. So they're like a
go-between, are they, effectively?
A go-between, but also to an element, just a support, somebody who can help them with the courage and conviction that's required to get to court and support them all the way. They're independent of us, so they're able to give advice to that individual about how to handle the police, how the CPS are performing. They're advocates as well. So we want more of them out there to make sure the victims feel supported.
I've known you for a long time, and I can hear I know you well, and I can hear the determination in your voice. You are clearly, you and your colleagues want to address. But how are we to judge you? How can I come back to you in 6 months' time or 12 months' time? What is a target we can set, an initial target?
Well, as I say, we want by the end of the Parliament to be back to the level we were in 2016. So that means we'll be over 5,000 prosecutions. We're now running last year about 2,100. So we want to get up to that level. But critically, this is the other thing, Nick. As part of the plan, we're going to be producing scorecards every 6 months. Scorecards will be produced that look at the critical bits of the machine, if you like, that gets you from report to court. How long is it taking us to get phones back? How many cases are getting charged? How long are those cases taking to get to charge? All of this data and information, which has never been published before, has to be out there because we want to be totally transparent so that I can come on here every 6 months and you could say, Kit, in the Northwest, it's not good enough.
Okay, I was going to ask, will it be region
Yeah.
specific or police force or service specific? Which will it be, Kit?
So we're just, the first one will come out in the autumn. We're in discussion about what the best disposition of that. It may well be regional is best because obviously CPS areas are on different areas than forces.
That's what I was thinking.
So we want to make sure we get the right scorecard. But to be honest with you, Nick, as we produce the first one, I expect to come on to a show like yours and for you to challenge me about the scorecard. Why aren't you showing this? Why isn't it done this way? And we'll refine them over time. Transparency is the key.
Put that date in your diary. Just while I have the benefit on the line, I've got to get you to address another story. Unfortunately, again, another grim headline. Pressure on Khan, as in Mayor Khan, over teenage murder rate. Minister, you'll be aware, when the Daily Telegraph went to print last night, it was 17 youngsters had been murdered in London. Sadly, another event in Balham now takes that figure to 18, even since this story was written. I remind the listeners, you worked on this with Mayor Johnson, Boris Johnson, when he was mayor. You were a deputy mayor for policing. You, Stephen Greenhalgh, Boris, you worked damn hard on it. What's gone wrong?
So it looks like this is feels like 2008 again to me, Nick, and it's very distressing. Funnily enough, I had a meeting just yesterday with the violence lead at the Met to talk about exactly this issue. We've given them some more money, another.
Is that Commander Murray,
pounds.
Alex Murray?
Yeah, Alex Murray. Yeah, we had a meeting yesterday. We've given him another £7 million to get a grip, particularly on violence hotspots. The Met are throwing everything at it. The difference between now and 2008, I have to say, Nick, interestingly, is that knife injury admissions to hospital continue to fall. So the general violence, knife violence in London, the background violence seems to be falling. It's the sharp end of murders and homicides where we need to be much more focused. Now, much of that is gang related, and you will remember from the days of Trident that getting a grip on gangs is critical to driving down violence, particularly drug related violence.
Do we need another Blunt? Do we need another Operation Blunt, Kit?
Well, yeah, I do think we need stop and search out there. Yeah, we do, I think. And certainly that's one of the discussions that we had with Alex yesterday is how can they use stop and search in a focused, respectful way? They've got video cameras now on their chest that help to get out there and take the knives off the street tonight.
And I'm sure he's keen to do something, I have no doubt. But should we be seeing more leadership from Mayor Khan over this, Minister?
Well, it's definitely the case that political leadership is key. You will remember between 2008 and 2012, Boris and I stepped into this area, I hope boldly, willing to go out and defend the police for the things they needed to do and to sell, particularly communities who are disproportionately affected by knife crime, the notion that stop and search was required. Not ideal, but absolutely what we needed to do that night to make sure that kids got home safely. So I'd love to see Sadiq and indeed Sophie Linden, who's my successor as Police and Crime Commissioner, stepping forward boldly into this agenda and giving top cover, if you like, to the police to do their difficult work.
And talking about the top, is Dame Cressida Dick the right person at the top? She's had she's had a series of very grim headlines. Does she retain, you are, of course, policing ministers and crime and policing minister, does she retain your confidence, Kit?
She does, and she is the right person for the job, yes.
Kit, I look forward to you coming back on and looking at those scorecards together. And best of luck to your resolve there. Kit Malthouse is Crime and Policing Minister, appearing here on LBC. We're at 9:32, a little bit late. I'm Nick Ferrari at Breakfast. The news, though, with my colleague Thomas Watts.
The Liberal Democrats have overturned the Conservative majority in Chesham and Amersham, a Tory stronghold since 1974. Party leader Sir Ed Davey has told LBC the by-election victory has sent a shockwave through British politics. The government has apologised for a sustained downward trend in the